All right, welcome everyone. This is Faster's live AMA, Ask Me Anything, for content creators and educators in tech. So we're Faster, Filipino Americans in STEAM, Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. I'm Erin, so I'm gonna run through a couple of slides really quick, giving a Faster overview, and then we're gonna have our amazing panel of not one, not two, but three Pinay authors who are both software engineers, content creators and artists, and then of course the amazing Matthew Encina, who's an amazing content creative director, content creator, and educator from the future and all the other things on YouTube that I fangirl. He's been an inspiration of mine, so thank you, Matt, for that as well. Can folks see my screen really quickly? Just want to make sure everyone here, can y'all see this? And then in the chat, please, someone chime in if you cannot see this currently. I think everyone can see more. Yes, no. I want to make sure. Sorry, I know that I'm on like two different screens right now. We're good? Someone holler at me, Adrienne. Good. Okay, cool.
Looks good.
So the
you might have the Zoom people blocking some of the slide, I think.
I think my photo might be. So I'm going to put us in the little corner with Faster's face. Let's put it right here. Cool. So I'm Erin. We have Adrienne, who's a software engineer at MongoDB, who's a best-selling author of, is it Coding for Kids Python? I think I may have the title incorrect.
No, that's right. Coding for Kids Python. That's right.
Awesome. And is a LinkedIn instructor on Azure and cloud development. Matthew Encina of Blind, The Future, and many other things. And then Cyrene Quiamco, I said it correctly, yes, of Snapshot. She's an augmented reality artist and author of 11 Seconds to Success. I think the full title had her as Queen of social media, so you should definitely check that out. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. Agenda, so today, me, and you'll have a short couple of reels between Matt, Adrienne, and Cyrene. I'll ask a couple of questions on their creative process, how they got started, whether it was creating content on YouTube, whether it was augmented reality art, or just on engineering. And then we'll have an open Q&A with you all as the audience and lightning question round. So quick couple of things for Faster. We're a diversity, equity, and inclusion nonprofit. So respect's really important to us. If you want to read our full code of conduct, it is on our website. And there's me. So I founded Faster in 2015. That's me with my book. And you can follow me on all the things at Erin Jerri, at Faster Steam, at Creating ARVR. My book's on Amazon. You can find it there. And yeah, it'll be translated into Chinese and Korean this year. So I'm super excited, and I'm still pushing for Japanese. I work in the space at the intersection of everything in emerging tech you can think of. So virtual reality, VR, augmented reality, AR, AI, artificial intelligence. I love blockchain, esports, cryptocurrency, all that good stuff. And I pivoted my start to focusing on COVID-19 research. Originally, I was focused on R&D and advancing that for Alzheimer's research. So anything looking at DNA, protein, molecular visualization in brains. That was sort of my MO for a couple of years. And now it's sort of the same, except I look less at brains and more at other epidemiological data and other types of data that are helping with vaccine development. I also was a fellow in Oculus Launch Pad, which is Facebook/Oculus's content creator group for their platform. That's me. And then to my right is a co-chair Filipinos at Facebook. To the right of that person is Dino Ignacio. He used to be the head of Facebook Social VR. He's an amazing game designer and artist. And then to my left is Jewel Lim, who's actually keynoting at Oculus Connect this year, or Facebook Connect, talking about Oculus avatars. So she's also Chinese Filipino. So that's us, Facebook for AAPI Heritage Month. If you want to watch more about my video, you can find me on YouTube on the making of creating AR and VR. It's a 20-minute talk I just give on how I created the book. I also, I found out today, Adrienne was involved with Women Who Code. I was the lead evangelist for Women Who Code Silicon Valley, really active in the space. And at that time, I ended up founding another nonprofit, ARVR Academy, focused on women and underrepresented communities and AR and VR. So I did a lot of coding workshops on augmented and virtual reality. I was teaching classes for professionals at Cisco. My co-founders were teaching at Unity. And then to my, I think, second picture, From the left is myself and my mentor from Women to Code, Tarzine Jackson, who actually spoke at our Black Tech Leaders event, and her daughter. So that was me giving a workshop for girls who code. So when they grow up, you can be women in code, start off in girls who code. In my spare time, when I'm not doing tech, diversity, inclusion stuff and organizing, I love hip hop. The right picture is me, the shirt for Island Women Rise, that's Ruby Ibarra's music videos. I'm in 2 of the videos, so I love Ruby. She's also a scientist by day and MC at night. Used to do a lot of spoken word, music production. Most people don't know that. I bake, I like anime. I play pool. My boyfriend's a world pool champion, so that's me wearing the shirt at a pool hall, and I love poker. Quick things about me and my story. So I was born and raised here in Silicon Valley. To my right in this photo is Congressman Ro Khanna, who at the time was former Deputy U.S. Secretary of Commerce. I worked for him post-Obama campaign because I really believed in his message around manufacturing and having work here in the United States, but also thinking about being tech savvy. To the right of him is my dad, and then to the left of me is my mom. So they worked for about 20, 30 years in biotech. And then to the left of my mom is my auntie, who used to work at Oracle. So a lot of our family's been in tech. I know that's not necessarily the case for a lot of our communities, that you're encouraged to do nursing or something else. Growing up, I thought I was going to do computer science or music, or many other things, like be an IP and immigration lawyer, intellectual property lawyer. So I ended up finding myself by accident on Campaign Life. So I was part of Filipinos for Obama, had co-designed that logo. So I was still doing a lot of graphic design in college. That's me in 08 in Reno with Filipinos for Obama, where we were doing a lot of outreach for voters. And then, I guess the last couple of things in terms of education. So I studied a bunch of stuff at UC Berkeley. I didn't start with computer science. I actually opted out of it when I was at UC Santa Cruz for 2 years, and then I transferred to UC Berkeley. I was doing like a bunch of classes from social sciences, humanities, while I was still learning engineering. And then I retrained in the last 5 years into the industry at USF. I was a part of the deep learning program. I was a diversity fellow in the deep learning program in the Data Institute. And then I was in the data ethics program, which just was the inaugural program. They just released a great MOOC on this. So Fast.ai, Jeremy Howard and Rachel Thomas are amazing professors. They also wrote, I guess, a new book that just came out with O'Reilly Media, which is my publisher, on deep learning. So you can definitely check out all the different MOOCs if you want to get started in deep learning, machine learning, or AI. Check out Fast.ai. I totally recommend those classes. And with Faster, so this is just a quick overview for folks who don't know us. It stands for Filipino Americans in Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math, or STEAM. We do use the F, not the P, and that's just only because we don't want to have religious connotations of pastor, and it stands for one who self-identifies as someone that wants to be in the industry, and it's also a reference to an engineering term, being really fast. We're also a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit organization nationally. We have chapters in New York and LA. And of course, founded here in Silicon Valley, the San Francisco Bay Area. I know a lot of you are spread throughout the United States. Cyrene, I think, is in Arkansas, and Adrienne is in Las Vegas. And we have folks from everywhere in between Chicago, Seattle, Florida, wanting to join. So we do have reach, and we're really a network to connect folks. There isn't, I think, enough, or there aren't enough Filipino Americans in STEAM. A lot of the ones that we highlighted faster are, higher ranking, have been in the industry for a long time, but we didn't start there, so we want to encourage more folks to come in. We're building up the pipeline, and with that being said, our 3 quick components are Faster Education, Faster Pros, and Faster Fresh. Faster Education, or what we call Function, is our program for college students. We have a mentorship program we've run pretty much every year since we've started. I'm going to say 2016, and then we've partnered with the Filipino Channel University, TFCU, which is a part of their Collective Hustle mentorship program. On the line, we have Charity Nicolas, who is the founder of Tech in Color. It's a high school students of color outreach program. This year, we have an event focused on middle school students for Hour of Code, high school students on blockchain, and then another workshop for parents. For Faster Pros, which is our collective or sort of coalition of Filipino American tech employee resource groups, or ERGs, we also include independent tech professionals as well. So that's that component. And so for the folks who, necessarily aren't a part of a company but wanting to start one, or investors, we have Faster Fresh. If you want to join our program, please sign up for our matching program. we'll invite you to a private Slack channel that we're starting for a next cohort, I would think into the fall, winter, just to get folks to fundraise by the end of the year. And I'm going to say conservatively for Q1 of next year. So this is us at our conference that we hold every year, FasterCon. We just released today some of the initial pre-FasterCon events and agenda. I'm happy to say that our keynote speaker will be Josephine Santiago, the head of advanced engineering at NASA. So look out for that. She hasn't spoken publicly, about being Filipino American in terms of recorded video. So I think this will be actually the very first time that she'll be talking about that outside of the many articles on her. We expect a lot of students nationally to be attending as well as professionals. So please check that out. We have a couple more events coming up for Faster Funk or Function. This is for our college students, everything between national branding, resumes, eventually whiteboarding and interview prep stuff for all of you applying for internships. And then for Faster Pros, if you don't have an employee resource group, but you want to start one, definitely connect with us. We've helped startup groups such as Filipino Americans at Amazon, Filipinos at Netflix, as Kababayans at Netflix has hosted us. We've helped start Filipinos at Twilio, Filipinos who are hoping to be a part of this year's FasterCon, Filipinos at Workday, Filipinos at Riot Games, VMware, the list goes on and on. I can't even keep track of how many companies we have. These are just a few of them. We're active on social media, so please find us at FasterSteam on Instagram, Twitter. We have a LinkedIn and Facebook group and an email list, so please subscribe. And yeah, if you want to get involved in terms of like leadership, join one of our committees. If you want to tell your story, I'm working on another book for Faster. This will be, I think, for book number 3 outside of my one for Augmented and Virtual Reality. If you want to sign up for that, we have submissions for that, for starting chapters, things of that nature. And you can always email us, contact us at FasterSteam. And the last few announcements I have, so for coronavirus, as you all may know, there's a lot of movement around here for vaccine development. Filipino Americans are definitely disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. Unfortunately, a lot of us have nurses in the family and whatnot, and even the data from a lot of national nonprofit organizations and local ones that are Filipino and Asian American surveying, none of the data I've seen is complete, even in open source. It's not county-based. There's a lot that's missing. And so, a lot of our folks here in biotech and in health tech are actively working on R&D, analyzing a lot of this data and trying to make sure that our community is counted. So please take a look at that if you want to join our working group. We have a resource guide as well. And then for folks that are trying to find jobs right now, just because we have a lot of folks that are displaced from work. If you're hiring, please check out all the links in this deck that we'll be releasing right after tonight's event. And that's just so we can help each other out and trying to hire more Filipino Americans into different tech companies. And our main plug for anything related to COVID-19 outside of R&D research and anything scientific, we're supporting the campaign Filipinos Feed the Frontlines. We support their tech ops, particularly Kristen Brillantes, her restaurant Syrup Shop, and she actually used to be at Stripe and before that at Google Ventures. So please support, make a donation today. Cultivate Labs, which is founded by Desi. He's really amazing. He actually spoke at one of the first FasterCons about Soma Filipinas, which is the historic district in San Francisco. They've been running this campaign, delivering Filipino food to essential healthcare workers here in the Bay Area. And I think they're expanding to LA and possibly New York and different cities. So please make a donation and support them today. Last couple of things, these are just some of the events coming up. Just check out all the different links in the deck because there's just a fat amount for the last week of September. We have our next live AMA similar to today's format, featuring Filipino Americans in fintech. So we have startup founders, content creators, and other heads of finance, and my friend Dan, who has another podcast and is releasing a book on entrepreneurship. So please check that out. FasterCon, look out for pre-registration link events. We have some very, very special folks that are talking between entrepreneurs, like Yobi Benjamin's giving our keynote on civic tech. I think today we confirmed almost officially Pixar, so you'll see a couple of links sent to your emails about Arts Day. That's going to be pretty huge this year. We're including Netflix, EA, Electronic Arts, and hopefully Riot Games. And then we have tracks for each of our different components: Faster Fresh, Faster Pros, and Faster Education. And please don't forget to vote. Super important. APIA Vote is a nonpartisan nonprofit that's national in nature, and then NAFA, which is the big Filipino American Federation, huge acronym. We want to make sure the Filipino American community is counted. So fill out the census. I know that's ending at the end of September. So please, please, please make sure your family fills that out. And for our last plug, Black Lives Matter and supporting the movement for Black Lives. I've been in meetings with them on behalf of Asian Americans for Black Lives. I know a lot of the movement lately has sort of died down on that, even though there are reports of other deaths and things of that nature. So please check out our link that talks about our statement of solidarity, list of organizations to donate and support, as well as Black businesses. We have an event recording from our last event as well. So in case you missed it, check that out. And we have resources from Tatlang Bagsak, which is FilipinX for Black Lives, and a lot of Asian American resources for anyone who's undergoing racism and violence during COVID. We link that as well. So anyways, with that being said, we can officially start our live AMA. So I'm Erin, and before I introduce Matt, I just want to say a couple of things. I did pull out this book, and I wanted to do, I don't know if I can bring everyone on video for this screenshot. Let me do a stop share. Can everyone see us? How many folks? Oh yeah, we have more people in. So Cyrene, Adrienne, and Matt, do you want to hold up each of your books? We're gonna take a quick selfie. Yay. And holler at me, because I know you're all on mute. I'm like, what's up? I don't know what's going on. Let me see. Let me take a couple of these. We may do this again at the end of this, just in case something to roll out. Okay, cool. Oh, good. Charity says she sees the slides and everything else. Cool. So I'm going to actually have him introduce himself. Matthew Encina, who's a creative director, content creator, and educator. I know him as a part of The Future, which is one of my favorites. Things to watch on YouTube with Chris Do, and also Blind. And if you look at the portfolio of Matt's work, it is vast and amazing, super impressive. When I first saw his stuff, I was like, I think he's Filipino. Then I found him on Facebook and I asked, are you Filipino? Can you speak of this? I was so excited. So with that being said, I'm gonna bring Matt on. Matt, can you wanna unmute yourself?
Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yes. Cool, and I'm gonna share my screen as we go through, I think your reel and video.
Yeah.
Cool. And can folks say if they see this or not?
I can see it.
Okay, cool. And then,
even though I'm tired of looking at my face.
No, the chat. So do you want me to play the video?
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and play the video. So I'll just chat over this while this is playing. But for those guys who don't know, my name's Matthew Encina. I'm born and raised in LA. I claim that, but it's mostly the suburbs where I grew up, so posing a little bit. I studied graphic design at Art Center in Pasadena, California, and I've been working as a creative professional now for over 15 years, directing, designing, and working for some pretty dope clients. And then over the past few years, I've changed and shifted my work. I've realized that I have so much in me that I've been gifted in terms of knowledge and insights. So I've been sharing now all the things that I've learned over the past 15 years. I'm also a person who loves to dance. I grew up as a b-boy. I play too many video games. All my money goes into cameras and tech and computers, as you could probably tell from my fancy setup here. And I'm pretty addicted and wired on coffee, especially right now. So right now I'm a little jittery because I'm on my third cup for today. But yeah, you guys can watch this clip later. It's just a 1-minute intro to me, but that's me in a nutshell. So we can jump to the next slide. And the next slide is just a reel of my work. So this is more or less what I've been doing the past couple of years, doing a lot of commercial work for clients like Xbox, for PlayStation, for the band Coldplay, which was huge for me because I grew up listening to their music when Parachutes came out. I was still in high school, and it was such an amazing album and an amazing opportunity to work with them. And like I said earlier, I played tons and tons of video games, even some days maybe wasting 10 hours when I was a teenager, even as an adult. So I've done a lot of work working in the video game industry, working on promotions and animations in there. So that's been pretty awesome to do. But yeah, I know I've lived and had amazing opportunities that I'm very fortunate to have and very blessed for, just because these are my passions. These are things that align with me, but also because I grew up with a family, a Filipino family who is very supportive of the things that I do. So being in an environment where people, you know, buy you watercolors, buy you Legos, buy you pencils and art supplies so that you can nurture and develop your creative skills, like that is absolutely a blessing. And I'm so glad that I grew up in that environment. And what you're seeing here is the result of that after many, many years and decades of cultivating that, building that, and being around a family and friends that support me. So this is the result of all of that. And I know that I'm blessed, and I know that this doesn't happen alone. So that's just a reel of my work. And then if we go to the next slide, obviously, I mean, I didn't start there. I didn't come out of the womb and I'm making all this amazing stuff. So this next video is just what 20 years of development look like. I'm turning 36 this year, but I just wanted to show you, starting in high school in 1998, what my work looked like. And in a snapshot, how that developed over time since then. So over 20 years, what does that look like? Because I started off doing crappy self-portraits, crappy sketches, and didn't know how to draw worth crap. But over time, it became something bigger and became something more. So I just wanted to show you that. So you guys can look at more. I have a whole 2-hour series about my journey from high school till now. So I'll leave links for that in the description. These are all my handles. This is where you can find me. I'm lucky I have a unique name, so you can pretty much find me at Matthew Encina everywhere. And then if you're interested in learning about all the things that I share and teach, you could go over to the future. If you go to the next slide, you might know us from our YouTube channel, which is at The Future Is Here, and you'll find us on all of these social platforms there. But we share everything that we know, from running a creative business for a long time to all the soft skills and things that they don't teach you in school. So that's where I get to share all the beautiful things that I've been gifted, and where I share all the gifts that I want to pass on to all of you. And that's me in a nutshell. So hopefully that will give you an idea of who I am, what I do, and open up some questions for later.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. Beautiful work. I'm going to transition to, sorry, move a little bit, Zoom stuff popping up here and there, to Adrienne. Let me make sure. I think I might have switched screens. Adrienne, are you there? Do you want to holler?
Hello, hi.
Okay, let me make sure I can screen share. You had a reel or a couple of reels, right?
No, I now see from both Matthew and Cyrene that I need to get a reel, but I have a couple slides.
Other stuff. Yes, you have some slides and you have your Twitch. That's what I meant earlier. Cool.
Yes.
Let me screen share that. Don't worry about the blackout spots in screen. We're okay, girl. Alrighty. So Adrienne was introduced to me by Wesley Webster, who I think is in this chat right now as well. She's an best-selling author. I think her stuff was higher ranked than mine. I was like, oh shoot. On Coding for Kids Python. And again, she is a LinkedIn instructor at Azure and Cloud Development. And her day job is working as a software engineer for MongoDB. So Adrienne, this is all you.
Thank you. So I wanted to start with this because I wanted to kind of show what I'm doing now. And right now, my official title is a developer advocate at MongoDB. And one of the really cool things about that job is that I get to do things like this. So this is an example of the first ever conference that focused on DevOps, and we held it in Animal Crossing. And so I got to speak in this conference as my character in Animal Crossing, and it was the first thing everyone has ever seen of this, and that was super, super cool. And I would consider this, what I do right now, my dream job. I get to, when we get to travel again, I get to travel all over and talk about tech topics. Particularly now, we try to weave in some MongoDB in there because that is the company I work for. But overall, we just get to teach other developers about things that they can do and how to become better developers. So that is the majority of what I do. But while this is all happening, we've kind of shut down. Nobody's traveling anymore. We're still doing some conferences online like this. And so right now we're kind of focused more on content. And if you'll go to the next slide. So speaking of content, the first couple things that I created were these things here, which was some courses on LinkedIn Learning. So this is very, very special to me because with the topics that I teach, which is how to develop applications in Azure and cloud development in general, there are not a lot of people that look like me in that space. And so when I saw this opportunity and applied for it and eventually got it, and it was something that was very, very awesome for me because I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of white guys in tech in general. And then to go further into the cloud development space, there's not too many other people there. So to have some kind of Filipino representation meant a lot to me. And I've actually kind of encouraged other people to say, oh, there's, you know, more avenues that we can get into, and there are other things to explore in tech. Cloud development was something that was not even recognized as a possible path for a lot of devs. A lot of devs just think it's web development and that's it. And I want to just show that there's so many more avenues that you can go into in tech. It doesn't have to be coding. It doesn't have to be whatever narrow view you may have seen before. So this is something I'm very proud of, and you'll see all the links later of how you can get to it if you are interested. You can go to the next slide, please.
Your montage.
Yes, so this is another thing I'm super proud of. So that is the book, this one that we took a selfie with. And it was one of the hardest things that I have ever had to do in my career. I put this montage together because I want to show that even though it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, so many people ask me, was it worth it? And I say, yes. To see these pictures reminds me that I'm inspiring a bunch of little kids, a bunch of little girls that, you know, you don't have to have whatever perception or stereotype of a developer to be one and to become one. When they see me, they go, wow, you know, when you see some of these pictures here where I'm by schools, and I would talk to the little kids there, especially young girls, and they would say, wow, are you really a developer? I've never seen a developer wearing heels before. I'm like, yeah, I am. And so that kind of representation, you can directly see the impact of that by doing these kinds of volunteering and, you know, teaching kids, maybe leading them in an hour of code. But back to this book, I was working full-time, not in this job, but in a previous job in a small startup here in Las Vegas. And so that's like a full-time 40-hour-a-week job with our own deadlines, own meetings, all that stuff during the day. And then to come home after in a long commute and then having to write this book out with the audience of kids, someone who has no idea what programming is, to break those kinds of concepts down into, you know, a reasonable format that they may understand was something that really put my skills to the test, to really break it down, reiterate, and write it over and over again, and to do it in the span of 3 months while working. So I don't advise doing that, but it's certainly an awesome experience. If you ever are interested in creating your own book, I highly recommend it. And I think you will be proud of whatever you do accomplish in the end. So that is something I'm also very, very proud of. You can go to the next slide, please. And lastly, to kind of veer off to where I am now. So I just recently started a Twitch channel, and I don't know if you kind of saw that in the, it was a clutch win. So I thought I was going to fall in Fall Guys, but the little whirly gig actually pushed me over to the edge, and I actually qualified, and that was cool. And I wanted to just share that I'm trying something new. I've always seen Twitch. I love playing video games as well, but I was always too afraid to kind of stream, right? Like, I'm not a speed runner. I'm not someone who's like an ace shooter in Call of Duty. I'm like, who's gonna want to watch me? But I ended up starting it anyway because, again, for my current job at MongoDB as a developer advocate, we actually stream on Twitch on the official MongoDB channel, not just how to develop applications with MongoDB, but sometimes we get with our team and do some games. So I figured I'd start my own channel because there's obviously things I'd like to share that wouldn't be appropriate on MongoDB or wouldn't be a good use of time for us. And I'm excited to share my journey there. So I would love for you all to follow me there just to check out if I ever make it past season 1 in Fall Guys, but also to see some potential programming streams in the near future. But I'm super excited to talk to you all and hear all of your questions, and hopefully we'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. It's always a pleasure to see another amazing engineer, and then women in tech that I find, oh, you're also a woman in code too, an author, inspiring kids. It's super amazing. So now we're going to transition to our last featured speaker. Let me actually see if I can, and the Zoom is a little bit wacky with me today. Can you holler at me, Cyrene?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, let me stop sharing. There you are. Okay, wait, so I have to just rave about Cyrene's crown right now. Can y'all see that? All right. Did you want to switch it? You switched it yesterday or the other day to, was it Snapchat or was it to the Baby Yoda, right?
The Baby Yoda, yeah.
You switch it? So before we get started, I have to ask, how did you do that on Zoom? Is this like a custom Snapchat thing that you have, or how did you do that?
Snap Camera, you download it and then you can do it on your Twitch live streams and everything. And yeah, you just search my name or the lenses that I make, and then they show up here. Okay,
I'm totally gonna do that from now on all my Zooms so that they're fun. Because I pulled out my Baby Yoda, which is on my little desk there, and then she would switch it to anything I was scared. And you had the Snapchat, and then you had the two. So that's actually what I saw from Cyrene before she gives her intro. That whole anatomical thing, when I saw that on Twitter, I was like, I have to message her. I think she's Filipino. And then I was like, I have to have her speak for faster. So I was so impressed. This is just one of the amazing, one of the many amazing lenses that you've developed for Snapchat.
Thank you.
Very cool. So take it away, Cyrene. You want me to play your reel?
Yeah, play my reel. Let's see if the sound works.
We've been having audio issues today, so we apologize. If folks want to give me feedback, I'm finally on my other computer, so give a little feedback if you can't for whatever reason hear anything. If there's audio cutting out, let us know.
Oh, you can't hear it, but that's fine. So I'll just talk over it so you can just mute it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, hi, I'm Cyrene, and I'm basically a professional fun haver. This is a dream job. Whatever I do, like, I just have fun, I create art, I travel, I take selfies with celebrities. But I want to take you guys back to how I got here and how I got to this thing that I'm doing full-time now. So I was born in the Philippines. I was born in Bacolod City. And I moved here when I was 7 with my mom and my sister. And my mom did this so we can have a better life here in America, a land of opportunities. My mom was raising 2 kids. She was single in a foreign country. And I knew that, you know, I can't take what she's done for us for granted. So I knew that I have to make something out of it. Very early on, I knew that I was an artist. And artists has this, you know, like, they're notorious for being like a starving artist, and that you can't really get paid or make it big as an artist. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I have to make it work. I have to make it where, you know, I do this American dream, get rich, get whatever, and while being an artist. So a lot of people have been saying, no, you know, you're smart. You have to do something, be a doctor, which, you know, I wanted to be a doctor. Doctors are awesome, a nurse, everything. But I have a passion in art. And what I believe in is that if you're passionate about something, you're going to give it 100% compared to something you're not really passionate about, and you're going to give it, you know, less than 100%. So that's what I've been doing. In high school, I took all these different art classes. In college, since my mom was a single mom, I didn't even know I was going to go to college. So I applied for so many different scholarships, probably hundreds. I heard back from some of them, and luckily I got a full ride scholarships, actually a few full ride scholarships that stacked up on top of each other, giving me a refund check that was enough to actually buy me and pay in full the house that I'm living in now, the house that I'm living in with my mom and my sister. And so I bought that when I was a junior in college, 22 years old. I have my house paid off, no debt, using my college scholarships. And I was also doing freelance graphic design at that time. I graduated college with 3 art degrees, graphic design, ceramics, painting, and a minor in digital graphics. Another thing that was something that people were telling me is that I'm in Arkansas and that there's not a lot of jobs here in Arkansas and that I need to move out of state. I knew that I have to make it work. I don't want to leave here and I have to make it happen. So out of college, I applied for all sorts of jobs, and finally I did get one, and it was in a small cosmetic company. And I was making designs for these cosmetic products that were sold in Walmart and stuff. So I did that for a few months, but then where I got, you know, my break is whenever I worked as a web designer for Verizon. They were starting their in-house design, and I was one of the first hires. And then basically that's where I actually learned. I mean, like I really like that I had experience from a smaller company and then up to corporate company. And that's when I started looking at everything and seeing, hey, if they can make their own brand, why can't I take my own brand? And I've worked for that corporate job for about 3 years until I started to realize I can do this myself. And what I did was, you know, I looked at different ways to do it. At first, you know, I didn't go directly to social media. I was just, hey, I'm going to make a website and then make my own brand this way, which is the 11second.com website. I created it. I thought I was going to put a lot of ads on there and then make my living there. But actually that website, actually, you know, I met a lot of people. I connected a lot in that website, and it started my, you know, my career in Snapchat, and started creating a network. And now here I am, and I'm creating art, I'm traveling, I'm creating augmented reality, just telling my life story. And I've been doing this for 5 years. It hasn't slowed down yet, and I love it. What else? You can go on to the next slide because I have some pictures there. Yeah, I did put some more in there. I snuck in some more in there.
You did. I'll tell you about, oh,
yeah.
These ones. Yeah, I didn't do these.
Okay, so I wanted to show you, since I was telling the story, there's me, my mom, and my sister on the left, and different things that I've been traveling. And there's the house that I bought, my very first house. And then that one's, oh yeah, I wrote a book, because a lot of people have been telling me, how do I take my passion? How do I make something impossible, like art or anything that you want to do, and make a career out of it? Because that's what I essentially did. I took whatever I'm passionate at and there was no field for that yet either, because Snapchat was just a brand new app before, and there was no influencer, no anything. And I was like, I want that social media and I want to make a career out of it. And I did it. And then if you go to the next slide, here's all the different articles that I'm in. I was so lucky that I caught attention ahead of time, because it was a brand new social media. No one even knew what it can actually do. And so I got a lot of attention for the different things that I did, which I created art on the social media, told stories. So here's me in Business Insiders. I've been in Forbes. Vanity Fair actually said that I was in the top 100 new establishment, like social media icons, along with Kim Kardashian, which I beat. They were 100 and I was number 85. Here's all the different celebrities that I've met throughout my my Snapchat. There's Kevin Jonas, Mario Lopez, yes, he was really cool. Rainn Wilson, Dwight from, I worked with him for Soul Pancake, and he was Dwight from The Office. I love Breaking Bad, so I got to meet all of them. Yeah, next slide. And yeah, that one's different.
Audio too?
Oh yeah, it's just, yeah, just mute it. So
Sorry,
throughout I just keep unmuted. So throughout the years, I've just been doing art, and then I found augmented reality, which helped me tell my stories better. I mean, now I can, basically make the world as, my imagination, anything can be magical. And so I've been doing augmented reality for about 2 years now. It's self-taught. I learned 3D, I learned how to use the software, and I've been collaborating with music stars and brands, creating augmented reality experience with them.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, I love it so much because I also work in ARVR. So when I saw it, it's like, so cool. And to be frank, between you and me, a lot of Facebook stole a lot of stuff from Snapchat.
Yeah.
So you are the original. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Oh yeah, and then the next slide is just some of the brands that I've worked with over the years. And yeah, that's it. And hopefully this opens up, some questions, and you get to know a little bit about me.
Very cool. I just want to give a shout out to Anthony Tadina out there. He was our very first, he was my first yes for FASTR for the very first FASTR event in 2015 at Cal. And he's seen me grow from, I want to be a graphic designer and web, I want to be in tech, to, I have a book on augmented and virtual reality and I'm doing stuff with supercomputing and AI now. So it's kind of, it's like a full growth, for coming full circle. And I think for a lot of the students, I know there are a lot of different mentees of mine that are on here. What's really great about seeing Matt, Cyrene, Adrienne's trajectory, as well as even my own personal stories, we didn't start where we are now. We started somewhere, and it was just even like Cyrene said, is, small job at like a little cosmetics, sort of like company. And then now working at Snapchat, we didn't jump straight in. I know a lot of you tell me like, oh, what are your top 3 companies? Pinterest, Google, and Sephora. And I'm like, it's a jump, right? I think a lot of us have done a lot of other gigs first before, I ever worked for Okana. I was, on other people's races. I was volunteering for a very long time and doing freelance work, just like the other, obviously the 4 of us that are on this call. And so with that, I'm going to ask a couple of quick questions before we open it up to the audience. So did any of you have any other family that worked in STEAM? So science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So maybe I'll start with Matt.
My grandfather, my brother, and my dad and my uncle, they're all in engineering, electrical engineering. Actually, my grandfather was in civil engineering, but that's all on, one side of the brain. All in terms of the creative side, all of my family was very creative. They're great at drawing, great at painting. They all did it as a hobby, but none of them pursued it as a career. But I think because of that, because they had that passion in them and they kind of nurtured me, I was on my way and they never stopped me. They just kept pushing me.
And they were supportive of your career choice completely, like into like this creative field when you didn't have like exactly like a title, I'm going to be an X, or you went to art school when they were supportive of that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. They never pushed me to do anything else. They never impressed anything on me other than stop playing so much video games. So that's all they probably told me growing up. So I was very fortunate to have that.
Very cool. It was like the opposite of Ben in the debut, who was like, I want to go to Art Center versus UCLA. Because when you told your story, I was like, so it's like the opposite of that movie. That's super cool. And then Adrienne, and I know Cyrene has a couple of other famous people she mentioned, like mine. Adrienne, did you have other family that was in, I don't know, either engineering or anything else in STEAM at all?
So the only thing kind of influences that I've had were all of my uncles. They were all either in sysadmin or tech support, or one of my uncles was VP of IT at Bank of America. That's probably, but other than that, similar to Matthew, nothing was really impressed upon me. Luckily, there was no like, you need to be a nurse or you need to be a doctor, although that was like the, I guess, default career if I didn't choose anything. But I don't know, for me, my family was just like, as long as you get something that pays good money and you can make a living, we'll support you. So in that sense, I kind of stumbled upon development on my own.
Very cool. And then Cyrene?
Well, I know my mom's brother, my uncle, is an architect. He designed the Hong Kong airport, but
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
cool.
Terminal 1. But as far as anybody else in my family, I know there's a lot of my aunts and stuff. It's like, yeah, you gotta be, something else, not an artist. But my mom was completely supportive. She was like, whatever makes you happy, and so that's what I did. But yeah, basically.
Very cool. So I got told double major in bioinformatics and computer science. My brother double majored in computer science and art at UC Santa Cruz, and then he rode the dot-com wave, was at DeVry, was trying to do startups. So I had a little bit of the tech startup gene very young. I can't say that everyone in Silicon Valley learns to code like I did when I was 8. And then when I was 17, I was looking at C++ and Java, thinking it was absolutely detestable. It was gross, but I was like, oh, I like CSS. And this is before there were floats. It was in tables. That was 1999, y'all. So that basically aged me. So it's a very different time. And then my other cousin, he sold his company in a couple years after 5 years at Salesforce. So he sold to All Cloud, Figure 8. So my cousin, OJ Malonzo, some of different folks in Faster tell me they know my cousin. So that's my cousin. And yeah, like I would say, between being exposed to, I think, games, especially from my brother, Matt was talking about like, don't play too many video games. I've probably watched every RPG. Like I didn't play all of them, but I watched it. Definitely that when I stepped into VR and AR, everything made sense of like, everything that I had gone through, even outside of politics, just different types of art, design, and AI, it just made sense. And so I was so lucky to find the space that I was in. And I guess this goes into my next question of getting started in content creation. So for my personal story around the book, I wrote a post on one of my favorite tech conferences. I know this is super nerdy, but for the folks in AI or in games, they may know the company NVIDIA. They hold a conference every year called GTC, the Graphics Processing Unit Conference. So I was teaching workshops on AR and VR at Cisco. And I got a free ticket to go. For my nonprofit, I usually had a free one every year. But I decided this year, I was like, okay, I'll write a post, because a lot of my nonprofit had been releasing open source documentation and framework on, how to use C# and Unity to produce, augmented or virtual reality apps on Google Cardboard. So I didn't have a demo, and I was like, I really want to make something cool, but I didn't have anything yet. And what was interesting was after I wrote the post, and it was actually the same content that's in my book. It's on data visualization and I'm going to say machine learning visualization in spatial computing or augmented and virtual reality. But my use cases were all B2B, so business to business. So that's biotech, health tech. I showed people giving demos with like, I think they were cutting out different anatomical structures in VR on HTC Vive. And so I would take, quick little videos on that, post them on Facebook and YouTube. Then I linked it to the post. I had a bit.ly of the post put in my LinkedIn profile. And the next thing I know, I get reached out to by a publisher, and they had asked me to write a book specifically on how to create Pokemon Go in augmented reality in C++ on Unreal Engine, which is one of the other game engines I mentioned, Unity. So that's their competitor. And so I asked a bunch of my friends, like, is this for real? Can I write this book in 6 months? Which I had no idea. Adrienne wrote hers in like 3. It took me about a year, but I actually pitched it to another publisher, which is O'Reilly Media. I had the blessing of one of my very good friends and mentor, Tony Parisi, who published 3 books with O'Reilly. So he was sort of like my straight white male sponsor ally. That made sure, between him and then my other mentor, Steve Lucas, who's one of the other engineering managers at Magic Leap, is also an investor at Qualcomm Ventures. Between those 2 folks and the last editor, Vasanth Mohan, who is actually a big YouTuber in this space on creating augmented and virtual reality from the tech perspective. He's an engineer. They became my co-editors and authors, and then the main sponsor wrote the afterword to my book. I will say that in publishing my book, that it was, as much as I want to say I want to make it absolutely sure that I get through this, I had pitched the co-founders of A-Frame. So for a lot of you all that don't know, in augmented virtual reality, we have this thing called WebXR. They were the creators. I encouraged them to create their own company. They ended up leaving Mozilla and founding their own startups. I had pitched their book with Mozilla and Google contributors, and they still didn't get accepted by O'Reilly. So they were really, in terms of whether it's Adrienne, Cyrene, or myself, like when you're reached out to a publisher and to actually get a deal, it's actually quite difficult. It isn't the easiest thing to do. But I would ask, I guess, each of you, so Adrienne and Cyrene, like, how did you get started in terms of like writing your book? Like, where did the inspiration come from? Whether you were teaching, whether someone approached you, and then how you went through that process, because it is definitely like a labor of love. It's a ton of work to do, and not everyone gets to do that. So maybe I'll start with Cyrene first, and then Adrienne, and lastly I'll end with Matt, just talking about even the process of like launching a YouTube channel. So Cyrene.
I was approached by a publisher, which is Mango, and they were so interested because I was doing public speaking, and then they know that I was teaching people on how to make it in social media, and they said this would make a great book. And so within the course of maybe about 6 months or something, they were helping me write it. We went back and forth, put pictures. My book's actually written like a workbook. And so I tell my stories, and then after that, there's little questions that you can do. It's like 11 chapters, 11 steps on how you can take any passion and create a career out of it.
Very cool. And then Adrienne?
So I was approached via Instagram. So for all of you who think maybe Instagram is not the way to go, it can have its uses sometimes. But when I started on Instagram, I wasn't seeking to be like an influencer or anything. Again, it came from the point of wanting to share my story as a Filipina developer and hopefully inspiring other women to possibly go into tech. So as I started posting more, I wanted to focus on trying to teach something in my posts. And one series that came out of that was something I called Don't Be Afraid of the Terminal, which is where I would share a terminal command a day or like a post. And as I explained that, that a publisher caught wind of those posts and contacted me and said, hey, we love the way that you explain these things in simple terms. We actually need somebody to write a coding book for kids, particularly in Python. Would you mind writing a sample of like they gave me a predefined table of contents. So luckily that was structured for me, but they said, choose any of these chapters and give us a writing sample just to see, if it's a fit for both of us. So I'm like, okay, let me try it. And I did it. I think I chose the loops chapter. So imagine explaining what a programming loop is, like a for loop, to the age recommendation for this book is 10 and up. So basically anyone who has no programming experience or is wanting to learn and is 10 years old. So I had to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite because, getting to this point, there's a lot that you just kind of assume that everybody knows, especially as you gain more knowledge yourself. You're like, oh, everybody knows that, or everyone knows what a variable is, or everyone knows what an if-else statement is, and that's not the case. So this really, really stretched my skills in terms of breaking it down into simpler concepts. And yeah, I wrote that book in 3 months. That was not by choice. That was the deadline I was given, but it did work out. And it was, again, one of the hardest things I had to do, but also one of the most fulfilling. So.
Still don't know how you did that in 3 months. I thought 6 was too short. That's amazing.
I don't know how I did it either. I'm looking back, I'm like, so.
Awesome. So I want to turn over to Matt. And you can talk about the very earliest videos that you were part of at the Future, or just anything before launching your own channel, because I think we have a lot of people within our Faster community that are thinking about starting like a YouTube channel or a podcast or something of that nature. And I know that's a really important medium on the visual side, and some folks are camera shy, things like that. Even to talk about like your work, talking about how do you do X as a designer, how does that play into your firm? So maybe you can tell more about that story, and then maybe more on your content development process too.
Sure. Yeah, there's so much to talk about, and there's so much packed in there, but I think I'll focus on how I got started. And like I was mentioning earlier, I've always had a good support group, and my boss, Chris Doe, who's the founder of The Future, he's also the founder of Blind, which is the creative service company that I work for. He was also my teacher at Art Center in 2006. I've had this guy in my life, and I anchored onto him pretty quickly just because I realized this guy's super smart. He pushes me. He never holds the punches, and he's constantly challenging me. So I was his student. I took his class multiple times. I interned for him. I ended up working for him. And eventually he brought me on as a creative director at Blind, which is our creative service company doing commercials for the clients that I shared earlier. And a couple of years ago, he started working on a YouTube channel. Originally it was called The School, and eventually it got branded as The Future. And his passions are design, business, and teaching. He was my teacher. So he found his little ikigai. Those things all kind of lined up, and he started producing videos. I think after about 1 or 2 years, he pulled me aside and said, you know what, Matthew, I need you to jump on the channel and teach something. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? I'm not you. Nobody's going to pay attention to me. They didn't sign up to watch the channel for me. They came for you. And I'm not that person. I'm always behind the camera. I'm never in front of it. And, you know, he pushed and pushed, and eventually he got me to go on. I'm like, sure. You've always been right about a lot of things. I know you challenge me all the time, so for sure, I'll do it. I started recording my first video. Didn't really know what it was going to be about, but I finally anchored onto an idea. And then I think I recorded that video probably 26 different times because I was so nervous. Like, I didn't like the sound of my voice. I kept saying like, you know, whatever, as I was recording, and I kept stumbling, and it was very hard at first. But 26 takes later, I produced my first video. I put it out on our channel, The Future. And then I got feedback, and it was good feedback. You know, I started seeing things like, wow, this is just what I needed. Oh, wow, thanks for showing it that way. Oh, more of this guy, please. And I started realizing the thing that I had inside of me was quite special, and it just took somebody else to extract that. Because when I first was pulled onto the channel, I had a lot of resistance. I felt like I didn't have anything special. I'm a good behind the scenes person. I'm good with doing the work, but I'm not necessarily good at presenting the work. I didn't feel very special in that sense, but he was able to extract it out of me. I finally got on the stage and then realized that, shoot, I have something to give, and maybe there's more. And over the years, that's ended up snowballing, and it snowballed so much that all we do now is content creation, and we don't actually do any more client work. We don't do any of the commercial work anymore because we've all found our passion in teaching and sharing and creating content. So that was a very big thing for me to get over the initial resistance that I had and the barriers I believed for myself, and eventually start pedaling and starting building that momentum. And eventually now I'm here, quite confident in front of a camera, confident in speaking in front of people, and realizing that there's so much that I have been given and so much that I have to give in return. So that's where I'm at, and that's kind of like the beginning of that all.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Matt. We had one question from Jonathan Nunez. Can you share that first video? Jonathan, did you mean the first video we showed earlier? Like his intro reel? I'm not sure. Jonathan, do you want to mention?
If it's the first video that I made on the channel, I'll post it in the chat,
okay,
so you guys can have that. You can see,
cool.
you can hear how stiff and awkward I was, but that's all the self-judgment. I don't think anyone else thinks that way.
And I will say, as a viewer of both The School and The Future, I was like, who are all these other people that Cristo works with? Like, there was that Latino guy, there's a dude with the beard, and I was like, that guy looks Filipino. I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch him. And then I noticed Matt had like, so you created your own channel after doing The Future. It wasn't first, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
What gave you the, I guess, like confidence to create your own right after branching out from The Futures, specifically like working with Blind and Chris, like that you needed to have like something that said Matthew Encina? What pushed you to do that?
Yeah, you know, it's just all the practice. So I started editing videos back in 1999 when I first got a Macintosh at school, luckily. And then I was just making stupid videos, like, you know, trying to recreate Star Wars scenes and all these dumb little things as a kid. And it's just practice. Eventually I did it professionally, but I never thought of myself as an author of anything. I would always do it for clients. And again, I think just practice on the channel eventually gave me confidence in feeling like, you know what, I could probably start my own thing. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but let me just try. And then I started making stuff based off of all the things that I've learned as a commercial director, all the things that I learned creating content on the future and understanding the platform of YouTube and the other social platforms, and then applying that on my own channel. And luckily, it all turned out to be something that is blossoming and is reaching people that and numbers that I never thought were possible. I never started making videos thinking that this is where I would be at, but here I am, and it's just a bunch of practice, many steps to get to this point.
Awesome, thanks for sharing that. On the education tip, I'm gonna transition this to Adrienne and how she became a LinkedIn and Azure instructor. And you're already, writing code as an engineer at MongoDB, so maybe you could talk about like what's related, what's different. Obviously Azure's in cloud development, and I know your focus is like C#, so it's a little bit different. And I know you were interested in talking with me and Cyrene about augmented reality, where I didn't learn C# until I was learning augmented reality, and I dated an ex-boyfriend who was, well, two of them, that was one in augmented reality and one in games. So can you talk more about that process and just like sharing sort of like Matthew and on the education tip as well?
Sure. So the same thing for the LinkedIn Learning stuff. I actually started that when I was, again, in my previous job, not at MongoDB. But the way I found that was actually through the Women Who Code newsletter. So I was signed up for that, which just aggregates a bunch of, events and postings and things like that. And one of the listings on there was for an instructor for LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting. Specifically, it was asking for instructors for cloud development, which is something that I had experience in and was getting more and more into in my previous position. So I applied. And they were actually very, very happy that they got answers back from that posting because, tech in general is very homogenous. And so when they saw that there were other applicants who could diversify the instructors at LinkedIn Learning, they were very supportive of that. And they actively try to recruit instructors for technical courses who are, not the usual. So I did that, and it ended up being very, very fruitful and a really cool experience. I think this is the first time I got experience with professional production of videos like that. And I learned a lot in terms of what you need to keep in mind for producing these kinds of videos when you're teaching something. So for example, when you're talking to like a screencast in a tutorial. When I first started in the booth, in the Whisper booths, I was doing a voiceover for some things, and my producer, her name is Stephanie, she's like, that's great, but next take, say it, but say it while you're smiling. And so I'm like, okay. And so I would do it, and then I would smile, and it was way, way better. You can tell the difference. And, these are things you don't pick up on if you don't do it. And the whole reason for that is when your face is not in view, you don't see the facial expressions you have. You don't connect with the person on the screen. You can't see eye to eye like I'm trying to do virtually. So you kind of have to compensate for that. And if I smile, it comes through, it comes out nicer, it comes more engaged in the tutorial, and you're much more engaged in whatever it is that I'm showing you. So that was a really awesome experience to learn those things and to incorporate that into, some of the content that I create myself. And then the next learning experience, again, came from that when I did my second course. So the first course focused on how do you create an application, but actually take it all the way through to deployment. So that first course was really a labor of love because I really put the beginner's mindset at the forefront there, because when you learn how to code, they kind of just teach you in isolation, this is how you code, like this is the syntax, this is how you build something. But then after that, you're just left with it. Like, what do I do with this? This is, unless you're just running it on my machine, it's not helpful to anybody. So I really made that course to bring it from here's how you code it, here's how you do proper source control, here's how you deploy it so the world can use it, and here's how everyone else can use it with all these best practices. And that was a fully like voiced over screen tutorial. The second course that I did was kind of like an overview of Azure, which is completely overwhelming. It has more than like 300 services that you can use as a dev. And when you first start out going in there, you're like, I don't know what to use. Like, I know that I might need some of it as a developer, but you can get lost very, very quickly. So again, it's an essentials course. It's like, what do you, the developer, need to know about Azure? What is relevant to you? And so that course was actually a full live action course. And that's where like I was standing in front of the camera, talking, doing examples, doing all these kinds of things. And it's the same thing with that. In live action, you learn a lot of different things. Like I like to really look off screen a lot, and they're like, try to focus on the teleprompter here, Adrienne. But I think I found a lot of joy in the live action courses more because I like showing coding examples or concepts with really fun metaphors. So for example, the last course that I did, I was able to bring like a live cake on screen and like use it as an example. So that was really cool. So all of that is to say, I really enjoy bringing my perspective, my views on things, and maybe even putting a lot of like Filipino influences in the examples and things that I do, because that's what I like to do. That shows I'm proud of what I'm doing and that we're here. And, you know, it's certainly going to be different from all the typical technical examples you already see online. So that's one way to differentiate myself. So yeah, that was a long-winded answer, but it's doing things makes you learn a lot. That's pretty much as concise as it can be.
I love the whole make the tech thing Filipino. We actually had my friend Eric Daza on one of our live AMAs with Charity, and he's a data scientist and biostatistician. So when he spoke at FasterCon a couple of years ago, he mentioned this data visualization is the pancit plot. And so white people would ask, what is pancit? They're like, it's noodles. That's why it looks like noodles in this data. So it's the same sort of thing. Like, where's your Filipino spin on what you do? And what I will say is for my book, right? It's did I put it here? Oh, like, okay, so one thing I'll mention, a pangolin is not Pangilinan. That's my last name. It's not a pangolin. I did not cause coronavirus. I'm also not Chinese. I'm a 16th Chinese, 8th Spanish, but both my parents are Filipino. I had to say that so many times. Like, I think right when I actually tweeted about my book, when I was giving, it was like an Amazon review giveaway for any like AR/VR experts and then women in underrepresented communities. The first thing I got, mostly from white people who are all like professors in AR and VRs, they didn't rave the book was about AR and VR. They said, pangolin, it has to be related to her last name. And I was like, no. And I was really offended. Like, my dad was a part of like the generations of Katipo, and I had to explain it and reply to everyone and say like, no, and I'm Filipino, and it had nothing to do with Filipino. Nothing in my book is explicitly Filipino, but I will say that I am the only Pinay in it. I fought really hard to try to get as many women contributors and reviewers so that we had, you know, a diverse set of folks that were contributing to the book. And the last thing I'll say, and this is before I ask the last few questions and pop in with Cyrene about her work with Snapchat and education as well, is I think with my book, the reason why I wrote it was because I was trying to find like this sort of thing. I don't know if folks have ever heard of it. It's the Open Data Science Masters by Claire Corthell. And I was like, oh, I want to make something like that, but for VR and AR, but there's nothing out there. And the only thing that we were finding, and this is long before the Udacity VR developer nano degree came out, which Vasant Mohan, my co-editor, and actually my co-founder of my nonprofit, and a lot of their other friends who I also know personally helped create that nano degree, but it was even before that. So we were creating some of the first open source software and content creation, educational courses online on Google Cardboard. And so when we put that out, it wasn't me, it was my co-founder Liv Erickson, who actually released a book when she was 25 years old on virtual reality. She has a huge following, and she was also at the time Microsoft's, I think, lead evangelist. So in talking about like, here are other, you know, some of my white women friends and white folks doing things, they were encouraging me like, oh, you should put something out. And I was like, I don't really know what. And when I had the book approached me, you know, by a publisher to make it, it was so specific in one example. I thought it was too narrow, because when I learned AR and VR, it was like, here's 5 different books on optics, SLAM, which is simultaneous location and mapping. There was 3D art. So I had friends who were artists in what's called Tilt Brush, where you just paint in augmented virtual reality, you sculpt in Oculus Medium, which is now owned by Adobe. So there are all these other tools to create AR and VR outside of C# and C++ development on Unreal Engine and on Unity, that it was like, well, shit, sorry my language, you have to read like 50 books just to get started. And I was trying to figure out, well, why can't there just be like one book? So I asked a lot of my friends who are all like heads of departments in different industry, and we put together the anthology, which I ended up being the one curating sort of the table of contents and pitching it. So that was a really cool process in which, you know, kind of writing the course I wish was there for me, that I had to sort of make myself, ended up being shared, you know, online, where I think kind of like Matthew, like I didn't know at all the impact that I had. I had no idea that the first meetup I had, there was a Chinese developer from Pico VR asked if it could get translated into Chinese. So now that's being released, I think it should have been released in China like before today, and in Korea in October. I had no idea it would be, I think it's almost in over 24 countries, so 24. So all the time when I look at sort of like Google results of my name or something, it'll be, or academia.edu, someone will mention me in some post. Like I have no idea, but I get inquiries all the time and LinkedIn ads saying, thank you so much for creating this content in your book. That I never expected. I just thought, oh, I want something out there. Maybe it'll be like an open source GitHub repo. And maybe with this book, like, you know, it'll help someone not have to read like the 50 million books that I did, make it easier. But the reception has been really overwhelming. And originally before COVID, I was planning on touring the whole, not just the whole United States, but really the world. I had to postpone that, obviously. But, you know, that's something I want to mention here, is that even as something as small as whatever you think it is, you can actually have a huge reach, you know, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, Snapchat, you know, Facebook Live, all that good stuff. So I see a couple of comments. Yes, thanks, Wesley. And then I want to ask Cyrene if you can talk about your work with education and Snapchat. I think you mentioned something with the Philippines, and is it the National Arts Foundation?
National
And more
Digital
about your work
Arts.
that you've done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, you know, like, as I mentioned before, that artists are, you know, have that stigma of being a starving artist. And I just wanted to, you know, go around and, you know, inform people that it's not impossible to create a career out of it, and that you can take your passion in art and have a living with it. And so what I do, you know, let me answer your first question, which is the National Digital Arts Association, is that I go around the Philippines and talk to different classes, different groups of people, tell them that they do have this career in art. Art is not just painting. You can take your painting, post that on social media. You can do art in web design. I was a web designer for Verizon. Do art in, what is it called? The product design, that's art too. I'm doing art right now with augmented reality, telling stories to my followers as an influencer. So that's art itself. Creating videos, creating games, all that is art. And I think a lot of people just think of art as painting, which is, you know, that is a good foundation. You need to have good painting skills. You need to have good art skills to do well on all these art, to be a well-rounded artist. But there's just so many jobs that people don't know that it's art. And so, yeah, I definitely want to get that word out there. As far as art and Snapchat, augmented reality is new. I mean, I've only been doing it for 2 years, again, self-taught with everything. And I want to push push what I can do with augmented reality. I started doing augmented reality as just, you know, fun-based things, you know, celebrations like this or something funny. But I've been working with a lot of brands. I've worked with red.org, which is an organization that does AIDS, TB, and malaria, and they do all sorts of stuff with that. And other nonprofits that I've worked with. And I'm like, augmented reality will help you tell stories. Some of my lenses have gotten over like 250 million views and uses. And I think it's a good medium. People are sharing it. People are telling their story with my art. And I'm like, why don't I do something with education in it? Why don't I tell a story that people want to share, people want to play with, because people learn from, you know, visual, people learn by playing. And I think there is a there's a place for education using AR, VR, and that's something that, you know, people should you know, expand on, because right now it's all just face filter, the dog face filters and everything, and there's definitely more to that, more to AR.
Awesome. So this brings me to my last lightning round of questions. I don't see questions in the chat, but if you do have questions, please put them in. Oh, no, wait, hold on a second. Did I miss a couple of Q&A? Okay, so we have a couple before I get to our lightning round. Yes, our video is going to be, it is recording. For whatever reason, Facebook Live was not nice to me. It was all of our audio issues today it was not fun. But we'll make sure that if you registered for this event, we will make sure that you get a copy of this video. We do have a couple of other videos, if you haven't seen them already, on YouTube of our past events. And so every event that we'll have between now and the end of FasterCon, we're recording them during the pandemic since we're not having in-person events. One from Matt. One time management technique do you recommend?
One-time management technique is, I'll give two. They're easy ones. Put all of your to-dos on a Post-it note for one day, and this is the most you could do, because I am one person who tends to get overwhelmed where there's 100 things to do at any given week, but I just only do what I can fit on one Post-it note during the day. That helps me manage my stress and my to-dos. And the other thing is work in focus sprints. So for me, I like to work in 90-minute sprints where I turn off everything, all kinds of notification, email, everything. And then I set a timer for 90 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever that can be. And I just focus on the work, and I get into a really deep state of focus, and I get so much done, so much so that sometimes I just keep going and going and going. So those are two things that really help keep me aligned and focused on my work.
Awesome. I've actually used that exact same practice. I forget to eat if I design. I was redesigning Faster's brochure for like 3 hours before I handed it off to our creative director. I'm like, it's 9 o'clock. You forgot to eat. That's how I know I'm in flow. And I know that's my fun graphic design stuff when I'm not looking at supercomputing architecture and a lot of other stuff that looks more dry and boring in the back, and I still like, and it's still cool, but it can be a lot when you get into the zone. And then other times, you know, because I do a lot of stuff in the operations stuff for a startup or even for Faster, it can be hard to focus. So you'll easily get overwhelmed with a lot of tasks in product management. So there's another rule I use, which is this is the rule of 3. Professor Don McBallen, who is a historian, rest in peace, and Alison Santiago Cabales, who's another amazing professor and feminist. Ms. Panayism is what we call her. She says you should just have 3 things. Most people can't remember more than 3. Try to have 3 things a day and don't do any more. Cyrene has 2 faces right now. I see your Snapchat filter. So maybe if you could be like me and be like, I wish I was Hermione, can split myself in 3, can, you know, manage multiple Post-its. I try that too. Sometimes it doesn't work. We have a couple more questions. We have one on education. I want to, you know, use this for people who haven't had a 4-year degree. I think, Adrienne, you majored in computer science, right? 4-year degree. I know not everyone is. No, she nods not. What was your degree? I can't remember.
So I still did get a degree, but I got a management information systems degree. So they call that the half CS, half business degree. So I didn't go all the way into CS.
Got it. Well, someone had asked about Bootcamp. So before I answer that, I will say my degrees were in ethnic studies, Asian American studies, political economy of industrial societies. I couldn't finish minor. I'm saying if I was in a double minor in French Tagalog while I was taking classes in film and engineering. So yeah, like you can do a lot. And that was for my BA. The more recent degree, which isn't a full-on master's, was in deep learning and data ethics. So a lot of that work is like master's to PhD level work. And that wasn't an 8-year, you know, PhD program. So you can start anywhere in between. And for a lot of the folks who are Filipino American that, you know, maybe shy, they don't have a 4-year degree from like Stanford, MIT, or Cal, or UC Berkeley. You know, we have a lot of our communities in boot camps from General Assembly. One of the founders of Filipinos at General Assembly, Joanne Boston, is an event producer and marketing and staff there that we have partnered with. So we do have a community there. There is a question on, as someone who started an immersive software engineering bootcamp program with absolutely no background in STEM or STEAM, what do you think of coding bootcamp graduates, and what is the software engineering job market like right now? If you're comfortable, would you share salaries throughout the years, salary negotiation tips, any stories of workplace discrimination, how you dealt with it. So let me keep that open if anyone wants to answer before I pause and answer, because I think there may be some stories here, whether it's engineering or even design, arts, because I think the salary negotiation tip is important to discuss as well.
I can start. So this is something I get asked quite often, and I want to just be clear that one or the other is not necessarily better. It's the answer that everyone hates, but it depends. So there are good boot camps. There are boot camps who are just in it to make money and really don't care about you. And then there are boot camps who really truly want to immerse you in learning the skills you need to set yourself up for success. What I answer when someone asks me this is, when you do decide to go to a boot camp, really do your research. Try to find other people who have gone to that boot camp and get their experience. Ask them, did you feel like you were helped? Did you feel like you learned a lot, or was a lot just kind of crammed into a couple weeks and no, support afterward? What is job placement like after the boot camp? Do they require a portion of your salary if they place you in there? Do they say, if we don't get you a job, you owe nothing to us? These are all the things that you should be considering when you consider a boot camp, because unfortunately there are a lot of opportunists and people who just want to take advantage. They know a lot of people want to switch careers, and they assume, I get a boot camp degree, I do something in tech, immediate 6-figure salary, and they kind of bank on that hope that you have that says, oh, if I just do this 3-month boot camp or whatever it is, I'm immediately going to get this. And it's almost never like that. So be sure to really do as much research as you can, get insider knowledge of people who actually have gone through it and have actually placed at jobs successfully, and then even then still really consider if it's something that you would like to do. I am biased in the sense that in my circumstances, how I grew up in my place, I'm in Las Vegas, and it just so happens that everyone requires a degree here. So for me, it was just natural to go to college, get the student loans, get a job to help pay for college, do all of that, and get some experience. I got lucky with doing an internship to get that experience. But for me, I still say I think a college degree is valuable, because that was the circumstances I grew up around in. My job market and the time that I graduated, a college degree was still very much needed to even pass the screening. Nowadays, because coding is becoming more prevalent, there are more and more companies who are saying, we don't care about a degree, show us what you got. And this is where I say, this is where having side projects or a GitHub profile means a lot more, or will definitely help you, and will only help you if you do come from a boot camp. They want to see that you know what you're talking about, and they want to see that you can do the work, that you are ambitious, want to do the work, and all of that. So that's about the boot camp. What is this? Yeah, I kind of answered that. So again, it depends on where you are. Some are becoming way more flexible. Even now, even more flexible. Right now, you can compete on a global scale. Nobody has to work in an office. You can try to look for opportunities that are remote. I highly recommend it, because it just gives you so much more flexibility with your schedule and what you want to do with your life. And especially in software engineering, a lot of what we do, you don't have to be in an office. Every now and then it would be nice to interact with your teammates and actually be face-to-face with them. But for now, you don't have to be in an office job. If you're comfortable, would you share salaries? So I will give a range, and this is based in America. This is based in West Coast, like market average, and based on my title. So my last job, I was a senior software engineer with C# background, and that was about 7 years. And I was making over 6 figures. So like lower end, over 6 figures. Now in my current job, I'm on the higher end of 6-figure salary. And that's also with some other perks that come with other tech companies, like how many stock units you get, how many, different portions of like retirement funds or matching equity that you get. There are different kinds of packages in most tech companies that you want to try to negotiate. which goes into what are your negotiation tips. I have the hardest time with this because the moment somebody asks me, whoever it is that is asking me, what is your number? I always gave a number. And that was my number one mistake, because they're like, oh, this is the maximum now that I have set on myself. And so please take this with a grain of salt. This is just my experiences looking for software engineering positions here, basically. But that's the one thing I've learned, and what my husband has always coached me on was like, no matter how much they ask you, always say, well, either I'm not comfortable sharing that right now until I know it's a right fit, or you ask, well, it depends. Like, what is the full scope? What is the full package of the full benefits that I am going to be getting? Because they try to hook you on a number and they try to say what, and do the base salary, but there's so many more things to there. What is your paid time off? What is your PTO situation like? What is the Medicare, healthcare, at least here in America? There are so many other benefits that you need to account for yourself, that you need to take into account that entire scope of things that you are getting. So if that's the number one tip I could say, is when they ask you for that, don't immediately give a number, and really push not to give the first number. Have them, it's completely fine for you to even ask them, what are the ranges you are expecting for this position? And that usually works for me. When it gets to the point where it's like really awkward, where it's like, well, what is your number? Well, what is your number? I still need practice with this, but the next time I have to use this, I will say, well, I'm not comfortable sharing this right now in this point in the process. I'd like to see if it's a fit first for this position. And
I often just say, you have them give the number first.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the goal, is have them give the number first, and then you always counter back and say, well, that's great. That's never the max. That's the starting point. You need to be paid what you're worth. And do you have any stories of workplace discrimination? Several, but mostly when I was younger. So when I started out as a junior developer, no one took me seriously. I wore dresses, I wore skirts, I was a woman, I was young, it was very rare for people like me to be in this field. And so when I did start out with those jobs, I was just not taken seriously, whether that's in team meetings and I would try to contribute maybe an idea I had or ask for clarification on something. It was almost like, granted this was in the jobs that I had in the companies I worked for, they would just kind of not give me the time of day. Like, oh my gosh, why are you even in this place if you don't know? But what I didn't understand back then was, look, I'm a junior. Like, they did not actually give me the right environment of nurturing junior devs. That's what you're supposed to do as a senior dev. You're supposed to help those, clarify those things for them, lead them. And as a junior, there are a lot of things that I could not have known at that point in my career. So asking for help, asking for questions was not a sign of weakness, but that took me a lot of time to learn early on, because I always felt it was, oh, maybe I am not supposed to be here. Maybe I am right to feel imposter syndrome. As I grew, I think the last story I'll finish with was the most ridiculous story of discrimination I've ever had. Was a recruiter contacted me and was like, hi, is this Adrienne? I'm like, yeah, how are you? It's like, hi, I have an open position. I'm like, okay, cool. Open position for a programmer. I'm like, okay, I'd love to hear more about it. Or tell me more about your experience. I gave her my spiel and she's like, oh, okay, that's great. She's like, so have you ever worked with any programs like Adobe InDesign or PowerPoint? I'm like,
oh dear God.
I'm like, okay. I'm like,
that's for a designer, not a software engineer.
Right. So I'm like,
yeah.
No, but
what you're talking about. This always happens to me.
I don't see why this is relevant. And she's like, well, this is for a programmer position. I'm like, right. I'm talking about programming in the context of software engineering, where I write code and create applications and, create programs. And she goes,
you create Adobe InDesign, you don't use it, like you're making, yeah.
Exactly. And the kicker line that I always share, and after I said that, she goes, oh, honey, those jobs are for the men. So this recruiter was someone who apparently this was what, 2013. It's gotten way better since then, but
still something like that happens.
Yeah, every now and then. So that was probably the worst form. But other than that, I've just learned to kind of ignore it. You let your work speak for itself, and there's really nothing else that anyone can say or bring you down.
Thanks for sharing that, Adrienne. No, that's great. before I let Cyrene and Matt contribute if they so choose to this discussion, I will say we have a lot going on in the chat. One thing I'll mention is San Diego, right? So if you look at the creative group, which I don't know if a lot of folks here have heard of Robert Half, you can look at them for salary ranges. I would say that the San Francisco and San Jose rates, because the Silicon Valley, are probably the highest in the country. And then if you actually do an ad, and this happens to me all the time. So when I was contracting, and this wasn't even salary negotiation like at a full-time job. So I was an independent or freelance contract for a time. And when I did, it was one of the people who I want to say is one of the pioneers of Silicon Valley, people who hate Steve Jobs. There are many people who hate Steve Jobs, but the person shall remain nameless. I had a rate that I gave, and then a year out, I found out that I was getting charged 8 times less than what I was worth, because I was creating not only the assets for something that was a responsive web app, but it was also asked, like, you're going to write Python, you're going to do this. And I was like, and I'm creating from scratch. It was like becoming a full stack, quote unquote, full stack. I hate the term, full stack engineer and a full stack designer at the same time. So I had no idea that my market rate was so low. The last thing I'll mention here for salary negotiation is, so even for my book, when that was released in 2019 of last year, I joined a women's author group and another women's club that I had been a part of. It's predominantly white. It's run by a lot of like the white women IP lawyers of Silicon Valley. I joined an author group, and then I saw the rates that they would charge for speaking. Obviously for Faster, we don't have that kind of money. We don't have, full-time paid staff. That's something that I'm working on right now with our board. But we've had other people potentially want to share and speak. I will say that every speaker here for Faster has done it completely for free, not asking for any payment. There was one in particular, I won't say who, had asked us to pay a hefty amount. And normally, if I go on a speaking tour or whatnot, because you book, this is originally before COVID, like your accommodations, speaking fees, my fees were less, I would say by 5 to 10 times less than my white women counterparts, who also were not technical, who were life coaches, and not to put down life coaches, but were not internationally like published, renowned, did not have books that are circulating multiple countries in multiple languages. And so I found it out through time that any of the work I was doing, whether it was like, oh, well, this is something that, it wasn't my paid primary work per se, like right now all my book royalties go back to my publisher, and before that my other nonprofit. I wasn't looking to turn a profit on it, but when I found out what the going rate was, I was always much lower than my straight white male women or male counterparts. And so that's something that's pretty common, when you're looking at different rates in the industry, whether it's a full-time job, whether you're contracting out work to clients, or even if you're charging something as simple as a speaking rate, which I had no idea at the time. It was only after I had sort of like gone through different folks to potentially be my book agent. Our VP of, I guess it was our marketing director for Faster, is now going to be a VP, and he was telling me about different speakers, other people I knew in the industry, and that I was charging way less than what I was worth. So we want to make sure everyone in Faster that comes to us, and whether you're starting out in the industry or you're another industry leader, that you are getting paid what you're worth. With that being said, before I enter the last round of lightning questions, Cyrene and Matt, did you want to respond to this question at all? Otherwise, we'll go to the lightning round. I know we're a little bit over time today, so Cyrene or Matt?
I just wanted to add on to like a boot camp or some kind of things. It's like for this industry, I think there's a lot of resources online. Like if you, those things can be costly. There's a lot of resources online, YouTube. There's a lot of free things. Just Google the things, and a lot of things can be self-taught. I mean, I'm one of those people who have like 3 degrees, so I'm all for education, but things are happening so fast. Technology is happening so fast. And I think, you kind of just have to Google your way through, and YouTube and stuff, and create that experience. Whenever I started out as a freelance graphic designer in college and also in high school, but people didn't know that I was in high school or college. I was just doing it for clients and charging them. And I think that was an important part of building a portfolio, and that's how I got the job. Not because, I got it because I have a degree, but also on this part, it's more about your portfolio and what you can do, just like what Adrienne said. And I just wanted to add that in, that yeah, there's a lot of information online, and
Awesome. Watch the future. I watched so much of that instead of getting another master's in design. It was like, this is gold. This is amazing. Matt, did you have anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to go through our lightning round, if that's okay.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to add really is just in terms of salary and finding a job, because I see another Q&A, another question here from Anonymous, and it's about making a decision. And I think it's so important that, at least from my perspective, it's not just about the money, but what you're actually going to get out of the experience. I think most people, especially young graduates, who feel like they're hotshots, they got the best type of degree or skills that are in high demand, they discount all the other things that they might actually get, which is personal growth and skills and access and proximity to either people or people that are going to push you, like I've fortunately have, and they just look at the money. They look at the money as the number one driver. And sure, money's important. It's how we all live and eat and do the things that we need to do, but I don't think it's the most important thing. So I just want to share that out there, where over the years, I've been almost poached by many different tech companies trying to just eat me up and swallow me, and are wanting to pay me twice or three times what I'm currently getting paid right now. But I've turned them all down because it's a simple question, which is, what do you see me doing there? And how do you guys see yourself transforming and growing over the next couple of years? And usually the answer, the reason why I turned them down, is because they want me to do what I'm already doing, but cheaper and faster and quicker. They want to just scale up production, but that's not important to me. What's important to me is personal growth. What are the things that I will be participating in? And then how will that align with what I want to do with my life? So every time there's a big decision that needs to be made, because I could see that as a question here, is just really write out, what are the things that are important to you? What's going to make you happy? And what do you want to learn? What are the things you're passionate about? And then you can, if you're really nerdy about it, you can rate all of those things and look at your opportunities. It's like opportunity A, it's like, okay, this is scoring 3 in personal growth. This is a 5 on salary. And this is a 1 in terms of how much free time I might have. Let's say those are your metrics. Then you might look at opportunity B, and it's like, well, the money is a 1. It's kind of low, or 2, but I can get by. But in terms of what I might get in personal growth, that's a 5. And then these other things. And so you might look at making a decision matrix like that. And then you can really look at it. Well, this scored 35 and this scored 39. So I'm going to go with 39. And that's how I'm going to proceed with my decision making. So I don't think it's just about the salary. I think it's really important to think about your personal growth, because that stays with you in the long run. Money is easy to make and it disappears just as fast.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Matt. My friend Anthony had a question on branding. Before I get to that, and the lightning round, I think we may have to cut the 3 that I want. So I'm going to pick one question that we discussed. 3 things I'll mention. So I pinged in the chat 2 books that helped me, Ask for More, and then Black Belt Negotiating, which I picked up again because I thought I was going to negotiate a big contract and thing that ended up becoming through due diligence and startups, and ended up retiring and creating an angel fund. That was very sad, but I was really glad that I was coming from the power position of negotiation. So I would recommend, reading books on negotiation, practicing with people outside of like interviews, things of that nature, because it always helps to get outside advice. And like Matt said, it's more than just the money. I often tell all my mentees to Google Marissa Mayer Matrix. So Marissa, who used to be the CEO of Yahoo and before that at Google, anyone who's read her story historically is really known, like how she chose to pick 1, Google, and then 2, the metrics that Matt's sort of describing. So I actually make all my mentees come up with like, here's a list of like 3 different verticals and jobs, and no, not just Google, Pinterest, or Sephora, or whatever company you want to work for, but like, I want to work in, I don't know, fintech, e-commerce, SaaS, blockchain, whatever you want it to be. Some ideal companies on AngelList and Crunchbase. And then I have them go through the Marissa Mayer sort of matrix of like, this is a really great experience to get my foot in the door as an internship. It may not pay as much, but I'll learn how to do X, which I've never done before. So that may be more valuable than an amount. And the last thing I'll say is like number 3 is I've had kids come to me cry, oh, well, I didn't become a Peter Thiel fellow. So this is everyone who's not having trouble with coding interviews and trying to get their first engineering job, say, I'm only getting, 250 to 300K and I'm interning and it's not that much, and they have sucky snacks or whatever, or they don't have free food, right? I'm like, it's Apple, come on. Like they don't have, and this is before COVID, obviously. So there's, I think, a sense of entitlement, and for quote unquote Gen I think if I'm Gen Y, Gen Z, millennial youth, of these certain expectations that tech companies provide. My parents worked in biotech for 20 years. They didn't have, you know, tons of free food in the cafeteria. And we definitely had stock in some of those perks, but I'd say the perks were lesser of the job. It was more about like the actual work and the culture rather than just a salary amount or all of these other things, where, you know, right now we're in a recession with the pandemic. It's much more comparable to be actually worse than when it is when I graduated into the recession when Barack Obama was elected. It was like anyone between myself and Anthony who's on the chat, we were just happy to get jobs that were paid in an industry or an internship. So you were lucky if you know, got something after applying cold. I mean, I've had friends apply for, you know, 80, 100, 200 jobs, not getting anywhere for almost a year until they got their first job. So if you are in this pandemic right now and you're looking for your first job out of school, don't feel embarrassed if you don't get in right away. It is pretty tough right now with the unemployment rate that it is. It's a tougher market. It's not a candidates market anymore where you get to be like, well, yeah, I'm like one of the kids that, I don't know, had a PhD and I interned for OpenAI, so I can have a salary that's almost $1 million as a front-end engineer. Like that doesn't necessarily exist en masse anymore. It's a recruiter's market, so it's very different. So it's important that you kind of temper your expectations, think realistically about where you're at, and then also, you know, don't feel kind of insecure or afraid if you have done a boot camp. I think for me, I actually applied for ARVR Academy. I got rejected saying I want to be an engineer, but I want to do front end, and ARVR teaches you Python, which I had already taken courses in, so I didn't actually need a boot camp. I needed to actually just get experience. So, you know, like Cyrene said, you know, it's all about continuous education, growth mindset, you know, out of like Carol Dweck, taking that from Stanford, is just really learning all the time and not getting stuck on just, you know, one thing. Like out of this boot camp, I can only get this one type of job, or out of this degree, I can get X. I have plenty of friends who've done boot camps that, you know, they took boot camps on JavaScript, but they're developers on Python on something else, right? It's really like not about the language, it's about the skill set in engineering that you get. So that I'll end with that, and then lightning round. I guess before that, because Anthony, your question, I don't know if you want to detail one more thing in the chat. When did you decide to start growing personal brand? How do you think it's helped excel in your career? I know Cyrene talked about starting pretty early, even doing client work at a college, but I don't know, Adrienne and Matt, if you want to say one more thing about that before I get to the lightning round. Should I read back the question? When did you start growing your personal brand?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think your personal brand is your reputation. If you go out there and you do good work and you really help people, they'll just brag about you. Now there's a way to measure that, which I guess is social media, right? That's one way to look at it. But, you know, likes don't buy. You could have 100,000 followers, but none of them could be your client or provide you with any opportunities to grow. So it's just really important on just doing good work, I believe, and helping people, because when you do that, the reciprocity happens and then your reputation grows. There's just more public ways to do that. And, you know, teaching online through platforms, sharing good knowledge, or making things that people can interact with, like Cyrene, and really bring joy to people's life. That's really uplifting somebody's condition. And I think that's how you build your brand, really, just to do that for other people, in service for other people. So I don't know when that happened in particular for me, but I think maybe it's a Filipino cultural thing that you always want to host people, you always want to help people. I think that's in our nature, and I definitely grew up with that in my family. So I think because of that, early on it's with client work, and then eventually it just became, okay, I'm teaching online and trying to help as many people as I can, and it's so rewarding, it's so fun, and that grows, and it keeps growing, and I'm always surprised on how big my audience is growing for something that was not my intent to begin with. So I don't know if I answered the question. That was just going off the top of my head.
I think that makes sense. Maybe Adrienne, you can start about, like, you talked about Instagram, and I'll mention a story as well. Like, when did you decide, I guess, to launch more of the content on there that was part of your personal brand before writing the book and, you know, becoming an instructor? I mean, like, what kind of pushed you to do that?
I mean, I still feel like I don't have a brand that I try to curate. It's more like now that I know that people are looking at me for either inspiration or look up to me, like the kids who get my book and end up seeing me, that kind of puts me more on the spotlight. Like I reassess things that I may be doing or get upset about, or see if it's even worth continuing to post to Instagram anymore. And then I think, you know, there are people who are looking to me for that kind of inspiration. So those are the people that I really try to focus. When I think that there's nothing else there, or that, you know, I just give up on it, I kind of bring those people to the forefront. Now there's the work brand that I have, which is my job as a dev advocate. That's what we do, right? We speak at conferences, we create content for the company that we work for. We have to obviously show a good persona and be, you know, the helpful dev wanting to help other devs get more people, build the community around our particular products. Excuse me. And so there's like that work brand, which is, I still don't see as me. That's just who I am as a dev advocate for MongoDB. It's not me, but I do put a lot of the things that matter to me, like making Filipino related examples in my tutorials, or making, you know, jokes, or being that hospitable nature when I do host Twitch streams for MongoDB. Those parts of me come out in that brand. But yeah, even thinking of myself as a brand, just, it's always odd for me. So I just kind of create the things that I want to create, and then if I know it's going to help other people, particularly anybody that has been looking at me for kind of inspiration, I try to keep that in mind.
Awesome. I'm going to pull up one slide related to this. I totally forgot earlier because I was thinking about brand. And I don't know why I forgot to mention it, but in my Oculus Launch Pad project, actually, I really, you know, when I was specific about my name, and it's funny, did I have it on a slide? I think I did. Maybe it was the first one. Yeah, right there. So right in the center, that's my name in Baybayin, which is the pre-Philippine, I don't want to say Sanskrit, writing system, more correctly speaking. One of our former board members is an advisor, Christian Kabuay, and I were on the project together for Oculus Launch Pad, and we're trying to figure out how to create an augmented reality, virtual reality app that would teach Baybayin, which is, you know, sort of like this very old indigenous, or I'm gonna say pre-indigenous language and writing system. It was like, how did we take part of our identity and then brand it in a way that it's like modern and new. I was trying to figure out, and there's a ton of examples in AI where people are looking at different character and writing systems and then trying to figure out how we capture that and do things like NLP, natural language processing, translation, just by, you know, drawing different strokes, it'll like know like Chinese or Japanese. I was like, so where is kind of like ours, was my question. And I think in terms of like the brand, I think a lot of people, when they think of augmented virtual reality, think of me, they don't know I'm Filipino a lot of the time. I always talk about it with some people, and I find there's actually quite a few Filipinos in VR. The first bride in VR, Monica Jo, who was one of our advisors before for Faster, was married in 1993. So, you know, there are different elements of her, whether it's Filipino or not explicitly in tech, that may or may not be, you know, explicitly Filipino. I think for this project, similar to like Adrienne, that was sort of mine. A lot of my day-to-day of what I do is like, I look at DNA and I'm like, that's not necessarily Filipino, but both my parents are in biotech. And one of the questions I got for my startup was, this is initially for Alzheimer's, was I looking at epidemiological data related to Filipinos? And I said, no, I hadn't thought of that. I was just looking at molecular structures. And now with the pandemic, as much as I do care about Filipino Americans and people of color that are disproportionately affected by it, you know, again, I was just looking at the molecular structures and the things that may be causing it. Not, maybe it's genetics, that would be like the one thing that would be carried over, but I was just really looking at something that wasn't necessarily explicitly related to race or gender identity, although there are differences when I did start studying the disease more heavily, that it's impacted disproportionately by Asian men who smoke, that are elderly of a certain age. And then I was thinking more about my dad. So in other ways, parts of my identity did come out in terms of like, you know, the brand and like how it may or may not be related to, you know, different things in terms of my work. With that being said, I'm going to do our last sort of question. Let me see if I can.
Wait, I do want to add something about.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Cyrene, did you want to mention more?
Oh yeah. I just wanted to say that brand is something that is part of you that you want to project to someone. or it's basically something like art in me, and that's what I choose to collaborate with brands with. And so that's how you find your brand. It's not necessarily everything about yourself. I mean, there's some things that, you know, I watch horror movies, but not a lot of people know about that. But when you're creating a brand to work with, it's like your professional brands. You find something that you want to amplify and show to the world. And that's how I found my brand. I wanted my art to be what speaks about me. I want my art to be the one that brands collaborate with, not the scary movie one. Yeah, awesome. And so in case you're trying to find your brand, just find something that you like to do.
So before going over time, I'll say two more things on brand that you all just made me think of, and I sort of forgot. So Instagram, as much as I know Adrienne's talking about, like, I don't know, we're super nerds, we like to share stuff about engineering. All I did was I posted, and I still have the pillow on my bed, it's a Women Transforming Technology Conference, and so I got in through Women in Code. It was at VMware, and I met one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. She used to work for Mark Zuckerberg, and before that, Larry and Sergey. Her major was holography, and she was the former VP of Engineering at Oculus, Mary Lou Jepson. So I had a picture with her and a couple of other women from Women in Code. And then 2 years later, I got pitched to be, I guess, like one of the angel investors in residence at Riot Games, or I was pitching them that because they wanted me to do some other stuff with something that looked like, I feel like it looked like Minecraft or a weird game that they were working at Riot Games. And so it's really interesting whether or not, like, you know it, you have a brand, right? So for me, I was just posting lots of content on, well, you know, I'm like a woman in tech. I'm going to a women in tech conference talking about VR and AR. I pitched my startup to Ariana Huffington at the time at the same conference, but I had no idea that someone was watching and that 2 years later, someone would offer me a job interview. I never applied anywhere. I didn't, you know, post my, you know, resume on LinkedIn or whatever, you know, like send it there. They just found me. And so I think in terms of brand, it's not necessarily what you have as your own logo, although that could be a part of it. But it's what people say about you, right? So when people come to me with Faster, oh, that's a really great brand. I was like, oh, and you know, it was just like this Filipino group that, you know, I wanted more Filipinos in the tech industry because I was trying to find them, you know, working for Rokana's campaign, and I'd grown up around it, but, you know, there was no pipeline. So I created Faster. And then with, you know, my own, you know, personal professional brands, now that I was like, oh, well, I have a book and I have an audience and it was like growing, I decided to, you know, even just creating my own fan page. I had never done that before. And like Matt, I was really shy. I was like, no, you know, I'm the person on the background. I'm just like the admin for my nonprofits. You know, I'm not the one speaking in the front, you know, and this was my first nonprofit, ARVR Academy, which was ARVR Women and Allies at the time. I was the person in the back being like, oh, I'm not an expert. So, you know, not until like I'm at this level can I do X. And so, you know, I would encourage you all to like really rethink, you know, the concept of a brand. You are sort of a brand, and, you know, I encourage you to just put yourself out there. You may not get, you know, the traction and likes or like a bajillion followers, like Matt said, that you initially want. You may get something else that you didn't even expect. Like I totally did not expect I would be pitched jobs, books, or anything else that I've gotten through social media. It was just by doing things that I was passionate about and I liked. And with that being said, I'm gonna end it here with our last quick fire round question. So I'm gonna go completely out of order here and just ask my favorite one. What is, if you had a superpower, what would be your superpower and why? So I'm gonna popcorn Matt.
Oh, shoot, man. I wasn't even, I know you even prompted us for this. Shoot.
That was the last question, right? There's two more.
Yeah, superpowers. Oh my gosh. I'll just go with strength right now because I've been I've been working out quite a bit. So that would help with my physical endeavors. But you put me on the spot, I'm not ready for that.
You want to popcorn someone, Matt?
Oh yeah, let's go Cyrene.
I want to do telekinesis because, you know, I'm just really lazy. I just want to point at something and then lift it up. Give me that food. Open my mouth and put the food in. I think I had a telekinesis. Yeah, telekinesis sense.
It's like Alex Mack.
Feed me
like your ramen. Irene Q Noodles. You have the coolest. Okay, we need to do another one of these where you and I just talk about AR and VR and then show all the things. Okay. Adrienne, did you want to answer?
I think right now the superpower I'd really like is to be able to eat whatever I want and not gain any weight. That's what I would like right now. Actually, I would like that all the time, but that's definitely something I would like. I was like, at first, I'm like, maybe flying, because I also want to just get out of here and like go places. But no, I think this one counts way more, is to be able to eat whatever I want and not gain anything.
So like Cyrene, I wanted telekinesis like Baby Yoda. I was telling my boyfriend, I was like, Baby Yoda's moving the thing, and he's like, no, he's not. I was like, no, he's moving. No, he's not. So I thought it was telekinesis. It wasn't. I was like, oh, I'm kind of stupid. But I thought of that one. But my favorite thing right now, I'm absolutely obsessed with the series on Hulu, 12 Monkeys. If you've seen it, it's like, I know people hate COVID-19 as much as I do, which is why I'm trying to prevent it. But the premise of the series is if you could prevent a global pandemic and travel through time. I also love the series Sliders. I'm a huge sci-fi nerd. My parents named me after a sci-fi actress in the 70s. So it would be time and space travel. Umbrella Academy and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the last episode was all about time travel. So I'm obsessed with that. And Back to the Future, of like multiple scenarios and worlds. Okay, well, 2 last quick ones. This is gonna be
basically with augmented reality, everybody has superpowers, right?
Oh, right.
Because you can be anything.
For sure. The last 2 quick questions. So I'm gonna bring it back to the Filipino-ness. What is your favorite Filipino food? So it could be a dessert, it could be a food that you like to cook or bake or not, or you can just buy and eat, and why? So I'm gonna popcorn it to Cyrene.
There's this Filipino food called piaya, which is like a flatbread and has sugar on it. So it's like sugar and bread. It's muscovado sugar. It's really, really good. Just look it up. And that's my favorite. I could just
Piaya?
Piaya.
I don't know that one.
No, it's from Bacolod, because they're like a sugar place. It's a lot of sugar.
Got it.
I like sugar.
You want popcorn someone?
Matthew.
Okay, so savory would be sisig, crispy sisig, not just regular sisig. It has to be crispy, and it has to be like sour and a little bit spicy. So that would be fantastic. But because of Cyrene's answer for something sweet, if I had a dessert that I would really want right now, and just craving it, is puto bongbong, which is like these little things that are like steamed in these shoots, and they sell it on the street. I don't know any place that sells it here in LA, but I remember having that in the Philippines, and it was amazing. And now I'm just thinking about it and craving it.
Very cool. And then Adrienne.
I guess I'll do 2 too. For savory, I absolutely love sinigang. The sour, the better, and with shrimp. And for something sweet, puto is a good one too. But right now, I'm feeling turon, just classic turon. Something not as sweet, not too sticky on the outside, but like has to be a little bit warm too. I could go for that right now.
I'm so hungry now. I ate my pad thai that I made from scratch earlier. My favorite fruit of all time that no one really knows, I guess, is Filipino. It's in the Philippines. When I went to the Philippines, I thought it was the greatest thing ever in 100-degree weather that was like frozen, and then it was good. It tastes like gummy worms, but it's like not artificial. Santol is like my favorite fruit ever. So if I could have santol all the time, I would, but it's not always in season. So that's my sweet. I have a huge sweet tooth. Everyone in Faster knows this, that my Filipino spaghetti, I don't know if it's a Kapampangan recipe, but I put pineapple in it. So some people put hot dog, we put hot dog, sausage or, meatballs. We use ground beef, but I always put pineapple, tomato paste, and regular tomato sauce, ketchup, banana ketchup in it. So that would probably be my savory. And if people don't think that's really Filipino because it's, spaghetti, I'd have to say kare. I know my boyfriend doesn't really like it very much, and his brother's allergic to peanuts, but I love kare. My favorite one was a vegan one that was soy-based out of this place called No Worries in Oakland. I know they're not in business anymore. I think at one point they had a food truck, but that's definitely my other favorite, which is also sweet, but it is more on the meat sort of side. And then our last question will be, what part of the Philippines are you or your parents from? And then if you speak any Filipino languages, So I'll go first. My mom is from San Fernando, Pampanga. So I speak Pampango, or I just call myself a Kapampangan. And my dad's from Manila, so my Taglish is okay, but I'm more probably Kapampangan than that. And I was born and raised here in Silicon Valley, so born in Santa Clara, raised in Fremont, but I still know a lot of the, I'm gonna say the syntax and grammar, I'm still pretty bad. I speak like a 5-year-old, but I can understand pretty well. I can survive some of TFC. And then I want to popcorn to Adrienne.
So my family is from Baguio. So just recently visited there. It's not the same. It's kind of sad actually, but I love it there. And yeah, born and raised in California though. But I did go to the Philippines for school for like 2 years. So typical scenario, I can understand way more. Like you can talk to me as much as you want, and then I try to speak back, but they just end up laughing, so I'll just respond back in English. But I try to practice my Tagalog when I am in the Philippines. It works, but they can tell that I'm from America.
And then Cyrene or Matt?
I'm from Bacolod, and my mom's from Hinigaran, and my sister was born in Manila. So I'm like everywhere. I usually try to visit the Philippines. I think 2 years ago was the last time I visited the Philippines, and I just go there to eat. I love the mangoes there. Yeah. Oh yeah. And the languages that I speak, Tagalog and Ilonggo. I think that I can speak it, but then my mom's like, no, don't try.
My mom says the same thing, like, no, that was not your first language.
Weird.
Like, what?
And then my sister's like cringing.
Okay. Matt, did you go already? I don't think so.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but my dad's side is from Zambales, and then my mom's side is from Paite, Laguna. So that's where they're from. But a lot of my family migrated over to Manila before they moved over here to the States. So, and just like all of you, most of you, stateside, I can understand, speak like a 5-year-old, and then that's it. But I'm not even going to try because it's horrible. But at least
Filipino karaoke.
Yeah.
Like me, I used to sing Sean Caneta, and people are like, you were so good. I was so fluent back then. Now I sing it, I'm like, I can't sing like Lay Salonga. It's too hard. We have one last lightning question, if that's okay with people. And this is Matt's favorite question. Any favorite games? If you have a favorite game, I'm gonna let Matt answer that one first. I'll go last.
Oh man. Not a genre. I will just say genre because I can't pick one right now. Genre is strategy games, and that's just because I can control everything. And my wife laughs at me all the time. She's like, this game doesn't look fun. You know, most people, they'll play games and they're shooting and doing it's all colorful and stuff, and then my game is like paced, controlling, management. It's like, why do you do this for fun?
Which strategy game? Like, if you could name like a few examples for people who don't know, like there's a difference.
Like back in the day would be Command and Conquer and Civilization and Age of Empires, and it's all these games where it's all about resource management and building slowly. So it's kind of lame, but so many people are into that, and my wife laughs at me all the time because it doesn't look fun. She's like, why do you play these games?
Awesome. Mine would be, so I can't pick Pokemon AR, but this is Pikachu, my dog. Yes, I named her after Pikachu, so we call her Pika for short. I don't know if that's my favorite game though. I'd say, I think fighting games, because I kick my boyfriend's ass all the time. It's Street Fighter. He actually, I think a lot of my friends, one of our friends in Faster was a Street Fighter like champ. So like any fighting games would be my genre. And then of course like Tetris. So that would probably be two. Oh, my third category has to be VR. So I absolutely so I lost 15 pounds since January because I tried to go vegan, majority vegan, vegetarian after I watched too many Netflix documentaries. And then I would do Beat Saber. If I could do like 30 minutes every day of Beat Saber, Box VR. So any sort of like dancing game, like DDR type of stuff, but in VR, Dance Central was the only way. I wasn't going to lift weights. And I can't do virtual like Eskrima right now. So that was my closest thing. So those are really fun too. There's also a really great series on Netflix called is it High Score? Not High Score Girl, the anime, but the series on like the history of gaming. So I watched some of that with my significant other, which is super fun. So I love games. Adrienne, and then I'm gonna end with Cyrene.
I absolutely love the Age of Empires series as well. That's like, it's so ingrained that sometimes my husband and I will just make the sounds from the game. So like, you will know this, Matthew. It's like when you're being attacked, they're like, ugh, and then whenever you are being attacked, there's like that bell sound where it's like dun dun, and then when you hear the arrows going, it's like. And then when you have the one that I love the most is when your farm is like dead and you have to replenish the farm. It's like, whoosh, whoosh. So like I've perfected those sounds, and like we're just super nerdy and just do that all the time. So I absolutely love that game. That was a big part of my childhood. Same with like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Zoo Tycoon. Those games I absolutely loved and grew up with. More recently, I absolutely love the Borderlands series. That's probably my favorite series. And now I'm actually streaming Fall Guys. I won't say that I love it yet because it gets super frustrating, but it is a very well-made game and fun to play.
Very cool. Did anyone here play like Warcraft? I wanted to join the StarCraft club in college, and I never did. I never got into WoW. My boyfriend was big in WoW. I have cousins who are esports coaches. Yeah, like I don't know if anyone got into those. Yeah, I super love. So when you talked about sounds like the ogre sound, my boyfriend, I love that sort of stuff. He was a much bigger gamer than me. So Cyrene, I want to ask you, and I want to ask lastly about the HTML5 game. I think you helped make 2 of them at Snapchat, so I want to give you a chance to plug.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I love games. You can see behind me. I love all sorts of games, but video game wise, I do like Tetris. Nobody can beat me in my college. Before I used to have Tetris tournaments. I like The Legend of Zelda. Legend of Zelda is I have all the series. And I like the retro games. I like pinball, crane games. I have mini pinball. I have like the arcade version. Also like card games, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon cards. I love Pokemon.
Do you play Hearthstone?
Hearthstone? No, I heard about it because it's like if I start on something, I get really addicted and I get really competitive, and so I'm just like, okay, I like AR. I need to be obsessed with AR because, and yeah.
Oh, what are the 2 games you made with Snapchat? Because I know you worked on HTML5 games, and I wanted you.
Yeah, and so like when you swipe up, you have like the instant stuff. Actually. I think the games that you've probably seen is for Soul Pancake, which is it's co-founded by Rainn Wilson, which is Dwight from The Office. I don't know if you've ever seen that show. And so he runs this channel and I make games for it. I run their Snapchat account. I make games. It's HTML5. It's basically a quick swipe up, and you can play the games right away. Yeah, it is for Snapchat. I don't actually work for Snapchat. I am self-employed, but I work closely with Snapchat. They, get me clients. I use their platform, but I also get a lot of outside clients too.
Very cool.
And yeah,
myself.
I make games, and then I also make games in augmented reality. So that's the.
Oh, can you tell one concept of your AR game before we go?
There is. It's like I did this one thing for Snapchat, and it's like it was the beginning of the pandemic, and it was to encourage people to wear masks. So you had to find like your mask, your hand sanitizer, and everything, and you're going around in this AR environment, and then you open the door and it says "Be safe."
Very cool. Did anyone here play GoldenEye? God, I love GoldenEye, and then Melee, and Super Mario Kart. No one can beat me at that.
Super Mario Kart.
Yeah, super fun. Someone mentioned something about all these foods. Suman, banana leaf sticky rice, dinigawan puto, crispy sisig, karkare, hollow special chowking, babinka. Sorry, I know I saw all this in the chat and I was like missing reading it. But anyways, thank you so much for your time. I know we went a little over time today. I want to thank Adrienne, Cyrene, and Matt for their time sharing their experiences as content creators and educators in this space. Follow us at Faster Steam. We're going to be releasing our FasterCon registration fairly soon. So please look out for that in the email. And then for anyone who missed this today, because I know we had a number of registrations of folks who didn't make it out, and we had some issues with our Facebook live stream, we'll be reposting this on YouTube. So it'll be a little bit edited from the beginning on our tech onboarding, but everyone should be able to watch the video, and then you'll have access to our slide deck so you can look at all the amazing links that each of our presenters have today. Thanks, Camille. Thank you all for your time. And again, just hit us at FasterSteam, faster-steam.org. That'll be redesigned, but get on our listserv. And then follow us all over social media on Twitter, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. And we do have a Snapchat account. I created it, but I was having some issues posting, including on my personal account because I wasn't as active lately. So we'll make sure to fix that in the near future. Thanks everyone, and thanks to our panelists. All right, bye for now. Yes, Cyrene and I and Baby Yoda says goodbye. And then Adrienne, Cyrene, and I will stay, and I will end the recording.